He deserves to be shot because he said that if his daughter got raped, she would have to go through with the pregnancy. So I don't care that he got shot.
So why is it something that some people like, you should shoot me?
If you said something deplorable like that, then yeah, someone would probably shoot you.
So first of all, the sentence "he deserved to be shot because he said" is immediately disqualifying from me taking anything you're gonna say going forward seriously. And unfortunately, this interaction is a perfect example, a perfect distillation of broad, and let me be clear about this, broad left-wing sentiment about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, what's interesting about this particular video is that this girl, the one who looks exactly how you would expect for those of you who are listening via podcasts, uploaded it as a way to show that she was smarter than her father. But what actually happened is that people realized how monstrous she was, how horrible she was, and how normal her father is, which ironically makes her much closer to the shooter, who apparently had a normal family, but of course turns out was indoctrinated by leftism to the point where he decided that Charlie Kirk was such a hateful fascist that he needed to kill him because Charlie Kirk wanted to talk to people. Again, how very unfascist of you in order to do so. And this is what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about the reaction to the murder of Charlie Kirk from broad swaths of the left wing, who of course are trying to excuse it, defend it, and do everything and anything possible to justify their bloodlust, because it is very important for us to understand exactly who these people are. And while one person may have pulled the trigger, and that's 100% true, it is the broad political movement that castigates people who just want to have conversations about conservatism, like Charlie Kirk, as valid targets for assassination based on what they said. So yeah, this is what we're going to discuss. This is what we're going to talk about. And without further ado, let's get into it.
I have breaking news. We think that Charlie Kirk just got shot in the neck. Hey, ooh, yeah, ooh. Cut the music. Cut the music. In real talk, I am not truly celebrating that he got shot in the neck. I think it's really sad for his family because I know.
So depending on how good I am at editing out the background music, which of course will trigger a copyright claim, which of course will lead to the suppression of this video, you guys may or may not understand that this woman was dancing to Celebration. So she's having a good time, enjoying herself, and she's announcing that Charlie Kirk, of course, was shot in the neck. Now, she ends up pausing it and says, "Cut the music," and then tries to talk to you real seriously. But you know what? In your minute-long video, when you open it with 30 seconds of celebrating the murder of somebody who you disagreed with, I don't want to hear your dumbass message about how, oh, you know what? Gun violence is bad. Which, by the way, if you're one of these people that are supposedly condemning this, but in reality you're just condemning gun violence and using this as a call for common sense gun control, I will point out that the assault weapons ban, all the different various things that people have advocated for, even Joe Biden's ban on fully semi-automatic weapons, whatever the hell that means, does not ever apply, and there's no bill that has been put forward that would apply to bolt-action rifles. Again, it's not semi-automatic. It requires a manual reload of each and every cartridge, or each and every bullet. Sorry, I know the gun nuts are gonna kill me for that. And yeah, so this would not be covered. What you're doing is actually grandstanding, and of course, this leads into other backwards justifications of the murder of Charlie Kirk. But it is important for you guys to understand that this is not only who these people are, it's who they feel comfortable being in public. This is the face that they put out for the world to see, which is them celebrating the murder of somebody just because they disagreed with them, just because they think Charlie Kirk is some kind of monster, when in reality, if you believe that you should murder somebody for disagreeing with you, you are far more of a monster than who you imagine Charlie Kirk to be. Because no matter how many times you try to say words are like bullets or words are violence, in reality, bullets are bullets and violence is violence, and you are in favor of that violence, and you show it to us with your exuberant celebrations of this man's murder.
The best part of this whole goddamn thing is that he is not martyr material, so his death will mean nothing. It will activate no one. It will impact few. It's just great.
Now, I have to say, one of the things that I do actually genuinely love about this clip in particular is that post this woman's prediction that Charlie Kirk's death won't mean anything to anyone, because according to this low-life loser, Charlie Kirk isn't martyr material, we've seen vigils across the world, not just in the United States of America, for Charlie Kirk. South Korea, Spain, England. We've seen it again in all these different various countries because people understand what is going on. People understand that the left is out of hand, and the reaction, the public reaction to these lefties celebrating, cheering the death of Charlie Kirk has been almost unanimous among good people, among people who understand that this is absolutely unacceptable. And what it actually did show is that Charlie had far more of an impact than many people understood prior to his passing. And yes, there is something about him that does have staying power. So this worthless TikToker who will never achieve anything remotely close to what Charlie achieved in a single day of work in his life can just suck on that for the rest of her life.
I know we're all still like reeling from the news, but you're mispronouncing his name. It's not Charlie Kirk, it's Charlie.
So one of the things that you'll notice about these different videos is that obviously they're disgusting. The words being used are disgusting. The people behind them are disgusting. But guess what? In addition to all of that, many of them are outward manifestations of the ugliness on their inside. And this transes person right here is a perfect example of that. Also, you're not really nailing it with the girl voice. Maybe go back and workshop that. Maybe try being a passable human being before you try to be a passable girl. And, you know, fix your life, get your house in order. Again, you are an absolute coward in every possible way, and I'm glad your outward appearance always marks you for the disgusting person that you are on the inside, and I'm glad this is true for so many of these people.
He's gone. I saw the video before they even put out the confirmation. There was no chance that he made it through that. This wasn't the one we were hoping for, but a welcome surprise nonetheless.
So again, another person who looks exactly how you expect them to look, and of course, this person decides to allude to the idea that this wasn't the one they were looking for, which of course is the evil orange man. And if you guys are unaware, if you guys are unfamiliar, there is an ongoing left-wing meme that is a call for another assassination attempt on the evil orange man, where they say some has got to do it. This of course has been promoted by Cenk's nephew, Taylor Lorenz, and many people on the left wing. And of course, it's getting reiterated right here because these people's bloodlust knows no bounds.
And the last thing on this today, yes, I am a better person than you for celebrating the death of a Nazi. And actually, it's pretty weird that you're not, and simultaneously asking people to have empathy for the Nazi. Y'all good?
So look, it's one thing to be an unhealthy body weight. It is one thing to have the mark of evil, which of course is the nose ring, the septum in particular. But to aim your camera up so we can get a view on your nostrils and both your nose rings shows a level of depravity that, again, I could have muted the video and understood just by looking at you. Nose ring theory is in fact real, and these monsters just keep going on.
That's why you just don't speak. That's why you don't speak unless you're right. That's why right is right and wrong is wrong. And that's funny. But I didn't like what he said, and I didn't like his opinions, and I don't really give a shit that he's dead.
So at least this person isn't smart enough to try to backwards justify by butchering a quote of Charlie Kirk. She says straight up exactly what large swaths of the left wing think, which is, I didn't like his opinions, therefore it's good that he's dead. I didn't like that he said things I disagreed with, incapable of arguing against them, so I'm glad that somebody did it. You know, somebody's got to do it. That's the meme when it comes to Charlie Kirk. And again, this is the side that will constantly go on about empathy, which, by the way, Charlie Kirk described quite well as a fake fraudulent concept, which of course is clipped out of context because in reality what he was saying is that sympathy is more important than empathy.
Instead, it is to say you're actually not in pain. So let's just a little very short clip. Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that it does a lot of damage, but it is very effective when it comes to politics. Sympathy I prefer more than empathy. That's a separate topic for a different time.
But this, like other things, will be used as a backwards justification from each and every one of these people in order to celebrate his murder.
Yo, they got Charlie Kirk, bro. I've never been happier.
Never believe the reason I'm smiling. And it has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. Nothing to do with Charlie Kirk.
I would say pour one out for Kirky Boy, but I don't waste good beer on little bitches.
I haven't posted on TikTok in a long time, but I'm gonna now because rest in peace, Bozo!
So again, I played a couple of these so you could see them for yourselves, and it is quite notable that all these different various people are talking about how they've never been happier, and I just want you guys to pause for a moment, a little bit of station identification, and think to yourself the happiest moments in your life. Think the personal achievements that you may have had, whether it's a graduation of high school, if you're a young person, you know, meeting the first girl, falling in love, getting married, having children, you know, all the normal rational things, maybe a career advancement that you would be celebrating, and realize that all of these people right here are absolutely worthless because the way that they experience happiness is through the suffering of somebody that they didn't know. It's through the suffering of somebody that has been fed to them as this evil white racist person that they never even bother to look into themselves. These are people who will never find happiness. These are people who are the personification of weakness, of all the different problems of terminal online nonsense, and of course many of them have nose rings, horrible tattoos, terrible haircuts, which again is not surprising if you've been paying attention to who has all the terrible takes on the internet.com. And by the way, I will point out that a lot of these people are going viral on TikTok.com. That's not the only social media platform where they're doing the celebrations, but this is the same exact platform where all of these people were enamored with Osama bin Laden's letter. By the way, a lot of these same lefties who are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, had they been around when, of course, bin Laden was killed, would have lectured you about the fault in your heart for celebrating the death of the person who masterminded the 9/11 terror attack. So again, make no mistake about it, broad swaths of the left are in support of terrorism, but against actually getting justice for terror attacks.
I just heard that someone shot Charlie Kirk? Dang it. Ah, shucks. Thoughts and prayers.
So this is a new form of the nose ring. This girl actually has a chain across her nose, and of course it is also indicative of radical leftism, of somebody that you should avoid on the streets, of somebody who definitely has them crazy eyes that are being accented by that nose ring. But I just wanted you guys to understand that even seemingly normal looking people, once they put on the nose ring, obviously turn crazy almost immediately. And yes, maybe I have cause and effect backwards, but in reality, don't care. It is the nose ring. Make no mistake about it. Now again, I'll link in the description of this video the compilation of all these different various people celebrating, but understand that this is also represented in broad swaths of left-wing media. Kyle Kalinske had this reaction to the announcement of his death.
Here's something that Charlie had regularly argued, and hard disagree on this one, man, but quote, I think it's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. So, hey, some gun deaths every year are worth it for Second Amendment rights. It's like, well, I mean, now you're one of those people.
Now, I know this doesn't need to be explained for people with above room temperature IQs, but the idea that this has become a punchline is so stupid, and it shows us the absolute lack of ability to engage in argumentation from the left, because in the context of vehicles, we understand this 100%. Yes, a certain amount of people are going to be injured and or killed in car accidents, but as a society, we make the trade-off because of the benefits of being able to transport ourselves via motor vehicles. By the way, you could make the same argument for firearms. Sure, there are a lot of gun deaths, but we also have multiple defensive uses of firearms, multiple preventions of crimes by the use of those firearms, and that on its own could be a positive enough trade-off, not to mention the deterrent effect, not to mention other things that, again, we benefit from having the Second Amendment. And then he and his wife, Crystal Wall, decided to turn around on social media and condemn the fact that all these different various people who are posting these videos with their full name, attaching their face to their beliefs, are experiencing consequences like being fired, saying that the right wing is very hypocritical on cancel culture. Now, make no mistake about it, I am not in any way, shape, or form participating in the highlighting of anybody's jobs. I'm not retweeting it. I'm not even encouraging it. And the reason I'm not doing that is not because I don't want to be a hypocrite in the eyes of Kyle Kalinske or any of these left-wingers that are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. It's because I think that there's a chance that you could misidentify somebody, and I don't want to participate in ruining an innocent person's life. But to be clear, the idea that I'm supposed to care or I'm supposed to consider the hypocritical implications of people getting fired for opinions that they post on social media, when that opinion is that they support somebody being murdered for the opinions that they post on social media if they don't like them, is absurd and ridiculous. Again, by their own standards, every single one of these people who got fired after sharing their opinion that assassinating people for sharing their opinion is a good thing, got off easy. They got off well below the consequences that they're celebrating, and I have no sympathy at all for them whatsoever. And of course, Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball whinging about this when they were just celebrating the firing of one of those guys who was on that Surrounded episode with Mehdi Hassan, who said that he was a fascist.
It's like, you know, I don't know how many of you guys watched the Jubilee episode with Mehdi, where you see these guys who come out and just be like, yeah, I'm a fascist. Dude who got ultimately fired from his job, good. Dude who got ultimately fired from his job, good. Dude who got ultimately fired from his job, good.
And then Kyle took it a step further, saying that not only is him being fired good and worthy of celebration, but it's okay to assault this person. It's okay to inflict physical harm based on his beliefs.
I mean, we need to bring back shame. We need to bring back shame. We need to bring back bullying. We need to bring back ass whoopings. We need to bring back ass whoopings. We need to bring back ass whoopings. We need to bring back, when somebody crosses a bright red line society, they need to know that they crossed that bright red line society. So when this motherfucker got fired, the answer is fuck yeah.
Then you have no moral high ground at all whatsoever to demand people on the right defend those who are cheering Charlie Kirk's murder, who are getting fired as a consequence of people noticing that they're employing a bunch of freaks that endorse the murder of people that they disagree with. Again, when you want those people to be assaulted, you want those people to be attacked, you want them to get fired, again, 1 month ago, and in addition to that, you guys supported and defended Luigi Mangione, and of course, jumped on board with the online trend, and it looks like, at least with the engravings on the bullets, that we have some similarities between this particular case and, of course, the Luigi Mangione case. And by the way, to everybody out there in my audience who got mad at me for condemning that murder in no uncertain terms, look at where we are right now, and I apologize for nothing. I do not back you in any way. Like I said before, violence is unacceptable. Killing an innocent person because you don't like their job or because you don't like their opinion is absolutely a non-starter for me, and I think that maybe, just maybe, you should probably think about that before you jump on board with an idiotic left-wing bandwagon. Now, of course, there's Jenk's nephew, the worst of the worst, a guy who has called for political violence repeatedly, and of course, somebody who has expressed absolutely no sympathy for Charlie Kirk, even though he is a public figure who does public events, and as somebody who's in the arena, there should at least be a bare minimum baseline of respect for other people. And of course, the obvious concern that if this becomes a trend, it could easily happen to you, for Mr. Empathy over here, who can't seem to see that. Now, of course, Jenk's nephew decided it would be a good time, day of the shooting, to just tweet out this little joke thing that they do, where he just states the facts, no, I hope you recover soon, once it was announced that Charlie Kirk got shot. And then, of course, he put out another tweet about how this is the whatever number of school shootings for this year, which, by the way, is a fake stat as well. Oftentimes when you look at that, what it ends up including is a school resource officer shooting the toilet, or a shooting that happens near a school that of course is not during school hours, and all sorts of other things in order to inflate that number, as if that is relevant at all whatsoever to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This in no way, shape, or form is what you think of when you consider a school shooting, and again, it could have happened to Kirk at any public outdoor event, but of course, Jenk's nephew has to obfuscate that, has to signal signal to his fans that it's okay, but not expressly condemning the violence. But even worse than that, Cenk's nephew decided to go on a PR tour. Now, there are tons of articles of him making this all about him and all about how, oh my god, wow, this could lead to something really bad. This could get out of hand if people start getting killed as a result of expressing their beliefs, as if that's not what happened to Charlie Kirk. And there's one article from Politico that I want to read you an excerpt from. I posted it on social media that perfectly distills the dehumanization of Charlie Kirk and the fact that Cenk's nephew is talking about him as if he didn't exist and his murder didn't matter. So the question is, what is the best case scenario of where we go from here as a society after Charlie Kirk's death? And what is the worst case? And he says, best case is reasonable, comprehensive gun reform in the direction of safety. That sounds insane. I don't think that's going to happen. But the worst case is what I'm seeing on Twitter. More and more of Twitter becoming real life, where people are getting increasingly more belligerent and increasingly more angry. There's eventually going to have to be a boiling point, right? There has to be a point where all the anger and frustration mounts, and in the absence of any sort of pressure valve to release said anger, I think people will look for different targets that they have designed as the reason why they feel the way they do. It can be a litany of different marginalized populations, black, which is capitalized by the way, notice that right there, and brown people, undocumented migrants, trans people, the left broadly, liberals broadly. I fear that this is the worst case scenario, people in this decentralized way seeking out vengeance, seeking out some distorted sense of justice in their own minds. So that's a real excerpt from a Politico article. That is a real statement from Cenk's nephew about post Charlie Kirk and the problems that we could see. He's worried about unhinged people that blame certain media figures because of their beliefs for the problems in their own life, seeking out their own form of vengeance and or justice based on the idea that that person is responsible for the way that they feel about themselves. That is a thing that this guy actually said to Politico. And again, he's worried about that after Charlie Kirk. He described the exact thing, the exact kind of person that is gassed up by his exact kind of direct calls for violence and political rhetoric that again encourages violence. He's worried about that happening to the left, like as if Charlie Kirk didn't exist, as if he wasn't a person, as if time started after the bullet hit Charlie Kirk, and we're not supposed to analyze, looking backwards, at all the different various people who radicalize this left-wing shooter, who, by the way, they tried to smear the right wing with. So these people celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk unambiguously, broad swaths of the left, not a tiny minority, not a little bit of a representation of the left, and then they blamed you for it. Then they said it was your fault. They said you did it, and they wanted to use it as an excuse to crack down on your speech. Just think about how asinine and ridiculous this is. These people said, words are violence. Charlie Kirk is a fascist. The Nation wrote out that Charlie Kirk is like the modern day Goebbels. That's an actual comparison that they made in order to back end justify his murder. They're digging up all these different various portions of a quote in order to defame the guy, including that he was against the Civil Rights Act, which was posted by one of these other lefty streamers slash YouTubers.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. As we note in the piece, Kirk has previously described Kirk as a hero and a civil rights icon. It's true. I used to be wrong. What inspired Kirk to shift his view on MLK? Why does Kirk think that MLK is a bad guy? When Kirk says that MLK says, quote, one good thing he didn't believe, what does he mean by that? Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right? Once a week we talk about why the Civil Rights Act was a mistake.
Now, of course, that on its own shouldn't justify a murder, an assassination, but turns out when you actually ask Charlie Kirk, what did you mean by that? He gives you a very rational explanation that tells you that he's not against the fighting against racism aspects of the Civil Rights Act. He's against the mission creep, how this 60s law ends up being reinterpreted and implied in order to cover things that it was never intended to do it. That's why he says it's a mistake, or parts of it were a mistake, as he does when you actually ask him to clarify.
You said the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so the parts of the Civil Rights Act were great, but the way it's now being implemented to force men in female bathrooms to push forward of the trans agenda, the intent of the Civil Rights Act is way beyond what it was originally authored for.
But the intent specifically originally was to
Well, that's
desegregate.
interesting. So the intent and the law are two different things. So the intent was noble, which was to say that no American can be not allowed into a place of business based on the color of their skin or their ethnic heritage. Totally agreement with that. That's not what the law only did. It created a massive anti-racist DEI army that then gave us affirmative action. For example, recently Merrick Garland sued using the Civil Rights Act, saying that we cannot have voter ID in certain states because it's a violation of the Civil Rights Act. So basically what the Civil Rights Act did is that it went beyond disparate impact and then went to disparate effect. In the sense where if black Americans are not doing as well as white Americans in a certain category, you can now use the Civil Rights Act and say that's a violation of the Civil Rights Act, even though there might be other contributing factors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's too broad, too wide, and it's now doing a lot of damage to the country. It's being used well beyond its original intent.
But to see Cenk's nephew's dopey, sad puppy dog face in all these different various articles talk about how he's the real victim, as if he wasn't the one calling for this violence, as if he wasn't the one begging his audience to take action, as if he didn't know that his audience is full of freaks and monsters that endorse each and every one of these attacks on the right or against their perceived political enemies, is absurd. Again, this guy recently said that Ela Klein, and this was for no reason because she hasn't been in the IDF in 20 years, was a valid military target in order to signal his audience, who was already harassing Ethan and Ela, already sending them death threats, that he was still on board with it. This absolute coward in every possible way is disgusting. And again, he's trying to make the death of Charlie Kirk all about him. He's quite literally in other articles debating the ghost of Charlie Kirk in order to get clicks and to plug his Twitch channel. Now look, I said it before and I'll say it again, acting out in any kind of violent way, acting out in any kind of crazy way is the thing that will dishonor the memory of Charlie Kirk. But the idea that I'm going to be lectured by Cenk's nephew, this absolute weasel, this absolute coward on morality is absurd. This guy is still encouraging violence. He's still justifying the murder of Charlie Kirk, even if for one instance he said, I condemn political violence in general, as if we don't understand the trick that he's doing right there, as if we don't get what he's saying, where he's like, I condemn these tactics overall, like overall I'm against it. I mean, there's a specific thing that happened that I'm specifically avoiding talking about when I say I condemn this, but you know, I'm gonna lecture you on morality, and I'm gonna lecture you on how politics should be, and of course, I'm gonna smear Charlie Kirk and proclaim that I'm better than him, even though we all know he would have humiliated Cenk's nephew in a debate, as he's done in previous debates. In fact, my first video on Cenk's nephew, which by the way, was my second video ever on the Young Turks on this channel, was about Charlie Kirk destroying Cenk's nephew and him proving what an absolute idiot he is. And this was when he was at the Young Turks, before his Twitch channel and all of that. So yeah, he's been nursing that wound for a very long time. He's been nursing the wounds of defeat at the hands of Charlie Kirk repeatedly in other debates for a very long time. And now he's taking his opportunity after he's dead to still lose to the ghost of Charlie Kirk. Charlie can't even talk back, and we still know that Cenk's nephew is losing the conversation because that's what a total loser he actually is. And of course, he's playing victim, claiming that Elon Musk is trying to get him deplatformed. By the way, he's complaining on X, which is owned by Elon Musk, a platform that he has not been banned off of. But you know, it's all about him. It's all about him being the victim. And of course, the right wing, so bad, so horrible, so terrible. I can't believe people are getting fired just for having the belief that you should be murdered for having beliefs that they don't agree with. This is so crazy. It's so sad. No, it's not. These people are celebrating the death. They're cheering the death. They're excusing the death. They want more of this.
So I keep on seeing like posts about this Charlie dude, whatever, Kirk dude, whatever, regardless. And let me just say this. I'm surprised that y'all didn't get rid of him sooner. And I'm surprised that you guys aren't getting rid of more people. Like, don't stop with him. Don't let him be the end dog. Get rid of them all. And the ones that are above him. Your mayor. Your city councilman. What is it? Georgia Power? The people that keep on raising our shit. The CEO. Get rid of them. Yeah.
And as we talked about before, this was all predicted by Charlie Kirk in a tweet in April of this year, where he highlighted the fact that the left was embracing assassination culture. Quote, assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Elon Musk. 55% said the same about Trump. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether losing an election or losing a court case, justifies a maximally violent response. This is the natural outgrowth of left-wing protest culture tolerating violence and mayhem for years on end. The cowardice of local prosecutors and school officials have turned the left into a ticking time bomb. And that's exactly what we're seeing right here. The left not only encourages this violence, and by the way, we're talking about broad swaths of the left, not a little percentage, but in addition to that, after it happens, these same lefties celebrate. Now, some of them are smart enough to say, oh, no violence, bad, a little bit, but also tell you about how evil Charlie Kirk was, so you give a little wink and a nod to it, because this is exactly who these people are. This is the outcome that they wanted. And by the way, now you have lefties dressing like the assassin, attacking Charlie Kirk memorials, because these people know no bounds of decency. But while it's important to not become the worst dredges of society that we are calling out, it's also important to not ignore them. Point them out for who they are, highlight them, call them out, name them and shame them, because that is all to the good, and that is the only way that we're going to get better. In fact, this is the one thing I agree with Kyle Kulinski on, which is we need to bring back shaming. Now, of course, in Kyle Kulinski's worldview, that only applies to somebody saying they're a fascist to Mehdi Hassan's face and then laughing about it, not people actually murdering people for speech and then celebrating that murder because they're actual fascists. But you know what? That's where I'm going to leave it for today. And of course, if you guys are unaware, on Sunday, September 21st, they're doing a memorial at, I believe, the Arizona Cardinals Stadium, which I think is called State Farm Arena or State Farm Stadium. I'll leave a link in the description. If you want to go to Glendale, Arizona in order to honor Charlie Kirk in person, feel free to do so. I believe that stadium seats 70,000 people, but whatever. All the information will be linked in the description. I'm going to leave it right here. Till next time.